Hi again, I'm Luke. This is my reflection for Module 5, which is about the environment and globalization side of cities. So we cover sustainability, energy, food, and how migration and globalization are shaping cities right now. Crash Course video on sustainable cities talks about environmental planning and what it actually means for a city to be sustainable. It goes through a few different visions, from buildings covered in plants to fully zero carbon smart cities. It's pretty interesting to see how many different directions sustainable can actually mean. And since it's kind of a buzzword that gets thrown around, it can be used for a lot of different things. So the guest lecture on biophilic cities talks about making nature a part of everyday life, not just something you drive to on the weekends. The idea that people need real contact with nature, birds, trees, rivers, not just parks a few miles away that you go and visit on a weekend. So yes, nature first, easy access to nature, and literally just being able to easily go get my toes in the grass or the sand. The City of Tomorrow reading talks about how cities use energy and how new sensor and network technology could let cities manage power a lot smarter than they currently do. Basically using data to cut down on waste, and I think it's a very practical chapter compared to some of the other stuff we read. It seems extremely realistic, and I would love to see this implemented. So the video on AI energy talks about how much power AI actually uses and how it's raising some climate concerns since data centers use a pretty insane amount of electricity. And yes, but it kind of just forces us to build up our power grids, which is fine, and invest in more nuclear energy, which I believe in. And it's not like these data centers are pulling directly from the power grid. Whatever power they need, they have to build, they have to pay for and fund that energy within the power grid. There are laws and more legislation coming out on this. The FT film on farming and food talks about how globalization kind of broke the food supply chain, and it looks at people trying to rebuild farms to be more local instead of relying on shipping from across the world. Yes and no. I love having bananas. I eat lots of bananas. They're great. And I just love being able to have exotic food. But to the point of peaches, whatever, like blueberries always being shipped, if you want to have them year round, then they have to come from another place. It's kind of just logical. Yes, you can build up as much farm infrastructure as you want, but we would not have all the fruit and everything that we want at all times. The New Yorker piece about the Queen's apartment talks about a journalist who actually paid to stay in an apartment with 12 migrants, all crammed into a few bedrooms with curtains as walls, and it's a pretty rough look at what housing looks like for new arrivals in expensive cities like New York. And I have to give so much credit to that journalist. The TED Talk on where people will live in the future talks about how climate change and migration could reshape which parts of the world people actually live in, including the idea that we might see more nomadic living again as certain parts and places become harder to live in. I think we're so far away from that, and I don't think it's realistic. It could be, because I guess more rural living could be commoditized, and you have Starlink. It could happen, but I don't think so. The video on AI WeWe's fence project talks about his public art installations with fences all across New York City, meant to comment on borders and refugee crisis happening globally. It's a very bold way to make a political point through art. I can't hate it. For my additional resources, I looked at the DW News video on how China became both the biggest polluter and the biggest source of renewable energy, which is very contradictory. I also looked at the Business Insider piece about how America is kind of becoming this one big yard sale, and there's nothing being produced, everything's just being resold. Fine by me. Putting this module together, the big thing for me is that cities can't really separate themselves from global issues anymore. So food, migration, energy, it's all connected no matter where you live, and the cities are the ones that just feel the main impact of it. No one migrates to the U.S. and says, I want to live in Blacksburg, Virginia. They want to live in one of the big cities and enjoy their time. Again, I used Perplexity to formulate my thoughts and make me a good flow to help me go through. The end.